This is Six Tackles with Gus, with Mathew Thompson and Gus Gould.
Welcome to a special Six Tackles with Gus preview of the Origin Decider for 2024. Great to be with you, about 36 hours out from kickoff, and the excitement is nearing fever pitch. Welcome, Gus.
Mathew Thompson, how you doing?
I'm good for bright and early on Tuesday morning. I'm waking up in the middle of the night with excitement about the Origin Decider.
Yeah, well, only one more sleep and then we'll be there.
Yeah, indeed. A few key stats. Queensland looking for their 25th series win. They won 9 of the last 10 Origin Deciders. The Blues have won the series 3 times after losing the opening game. We know it's well publicised that they have won only 2 deciders in Queensland, the team you coached in 94 and the team that Andrew Johns so brilliantly came back and reinvigorated back in 2005. Do you think now this is this is the pinnacle of the game? I'm always conscious of the importance of international football, but an Origin Decider at a packed-out Suncorp Stadium, is it the biggest stage the game has to offer now?
This is what sells our game. I think back to the first time that we had State of Origin back in 1980. We tell this story every year that when it was decided to have an interstate series based on where players originated, not where they were living and playing at the time, because back in 1980, it was only a Sydney competition. There were, I think, 10 or 12 teams here in Sydney, and everyone came to play in Sydney, whether you were New South Wales country or Queenslanders. They came down here to play in the big competition. Queensland had its own First Division competition up there in Brisbane, but certainly the major competition of the day was down here in Sydney. And when they made the decision to select a couple of interstate teams based on where you were born or where you originated, this is where the origin came from, State of Origin was born. And at the time it was considered to be a gimmick. It really was. Now, if you go back and look at crowds back then and average crowds around suburban grounds and the reach of rugby league in those days from a media perspective, and there was very little televised football in those days. Rugby league it was nothing like what it is today as a national sport with international appeal. And State of Origin is what sold the game to the country and is what sold the game to the world. It's the State of Origin concept just sprouted out of nothing. What used to be a very dead interstate series. I can remember Queensland playing New South Wales at Leichhardt Oval in front of 3,000 people.
Really?
That's how much interest there was in interstate series. It was all about playing for your country, playing for Australia. And for a long, long time, New South Wales used to dominate those interstate series because all the good players were playing here in Sydney, and that's where they picked their team. Representative football down here back in those days, we used to have a city versus country series. We'd have city first, city seconds, country first, country seconds. You had to be pretty dud if you couldn't get into one of those sides. They had so many rep teams, and then you go to the interstate series, and from there they'd pick a team to play for Australia. And quite normally, the Australian team would be predominantly made up 90% of New South Wales players that played in the Sydney competition. Very few Queenslanders would sneak their way into that state. So
that adds to the angst about Queensland as well, doesn't it? Just that New South Wales players seem to get preferential treatment.
Well, like we said back then, that first night when Arthur Beetson went back to play for Queensland in that maroon jersey and ran out onto Lang Park, and no one knew what was going to happen on the night. People just thought it was a gimmick and wouldn't last. They got a sellout crowd. Queensland won, and it left an indelible mark on rugby league supporters in Queensland back then. And I often tell the story of where some of these young players that played Origin in the 90s were that night when they saw what it meant to the people of Queensland for Queensland to win. And Queensland dominated right through the 80s. I mean, they had an extraordinary group of players, and I say that our game owes a great debt of gratitude to people like Arthur Beetson and Wally Lewis and those great Queensland teams who dominated New South Wales through that era and set up the rivalry that has become to known as State of Origin for the last 45 years. So, it's been an amazing concept, and this is what pays the bills, mate. This is why we can have full-time professionalism. This is why we have the game on pay-per-view television and why it's highly sought after in free-to-air television. And it's what sells the game. This will have international appeal, this game on Wednesday night. And for New South Wales, it's vitally important. I can't stress that enough. It's just so vitally important that they get a win here on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I mean, you've been talking about it's almost it's a what's the word? Every Origin's must win, but this is almost a moment in time game. And I've mentioned this stat a few times throughout the series that if Queensland win, they go 9 series ahead of New South Wales, which would be the furthest the gap has been. Even during that incredible run of 8 straight and 11 out of 12, they were never 9 series ahead of New South Wales.
Yeah, I can remember when I first came into Origin coaching back in 1992, when John Quayle asked me to coach the New South Wales side. Queensland had been dominant throughout the 80s. I think the series wins was something like 9-2 or 8-3 or something or other. They had a big lead. In 2004, my last game as Origin coach, we had a decider here in Sydney, and the game had great importance because if New South Wales could win that decider in Sydney, it would be the first time in Origin history that New South Wales would actually lead in games won and series won.
Right.
So it took us from 1992 to 2004 in that 12-year stretch to erase the lead that Queensland had set up in the 80s, where they had that dominant side and where Origin was all about Queensland. In 2004, we won that series and we bounced to the front. Ricky Stewart coached the team in 2005, and as you say, Andrew Johns came back. And we kicked a couple in front, and everything was looking good. From 2006 onwards, we went through that extraordinary era. And when you think of the closeness of Origin, not just in every game but every series, to think that Queensland could rack up 10 wins in 11 seasons was just unheard of. And I can remember a number of times during that period, a number of times. See, a lot of those series, in those series wins, the 8 in a row, I think 6 of them went to deciders, and New South Wales couldn't win any of them.
You were headbutting the desk about all that. So Queensland have won 9 of the past 10 Origin deciders, and the last 6 at Suncorp.
Yeah,
9 of 10.
That's mind-boggling. I can't get my head around that. I can't get my head around that. A game that is supposedly even money, it's like throwing 9 heads out of, if you toss a coin 10 times, would you get 9 heads? I hardly doubt it. The odds of that are quite astronomical. So I just think that, it's been an extraordinary period. And I remember a number of times during that period when I was doing things like The Last Word and commenting on Origin series leading in for Channel 9, saying that this was the most important game in New South Wales history. It can't get to 3. It can't get to 4. Oh, God forbid it gets to 5. It gets to, and
what were you saying when it got to 8?
It was devastating.
In the fetal position.
Absolutely devastating. And then we finally won one, I think 2014, after they'd won 8 in a row. And then we went back to losing again.
They won the next 3.
Yeah, so it was... So we can't let them get on that run again. I mean, this is vitally important, and Origin will go on hopefully for the rest of time, and I'm sure it will. But, so far as right now, New South Wales just has to win this. They have to arrest this slide. And I think this New South Wales side has potential to win again in future years. But you've got to get the first one. You just can't let Queensland keep doing this. And the fact that it's in Brisbane, I've got great respect for history. I've got great respect for what Queensland do. You cannot deny their record. You cannot deny how they own these moments and have learned to own these moments, particularly in recent times. And it's going to be a huge challenge, but it's one that New South Wales has to do. Whatever it takes, they have to get a win.
Before we drill down into the game, just a couple of things I want to mention. You mentioned The Last Word because Gus has retired from The Last Word. I mean, the great Origin players have come back. Fittler, Johns, Langer, not Gould. He's staying firmly in retirement. But all of your last words have been compiled, and they're on the YouTube channel NRL on 9. So even though you don't want to do it live, if you want to get pumped up for Origin, maybe do it in an ad break, just watch The Last Word leading in, and you'll be you'll want to throw a jumper on.
Yeah, I think I did make a comeback. I think there was a number of years that went by that we didn't do it. And then I did one in Townsville during the COVID period. Remember they had an Origin up there in Townsville? And I think that was my last one. But I think there was 3 or 4 years between that and the previous one.
You could do one whenever you wanted.
Mate, nah. I'm getting a bit old. I wouldn't remember.
You're in the best form of your life.
No, I don't.
The other thing that I've learnt, do you know Michael Maguire must be a listener to this podcast?
Right,
because a couple of weeks ago we floated the idea that the Blues should try to organise the trip down Caxton Street in the bus again. Well, he actually tried to make it happen. You got reported in the Courier Mail saying, Gould encouraging New South Wales to go down Caxton Street, which I don't think you did, but anyway. But he had his people talk to the Queensland Police to try and arrange it.
Yeah.
But they've said no.
I don't think it's the police. I think it's the bus company.
And the bus driver, more specifically.
The bus will be a bit of a write-off.
He'd need a tank.
By the time it gets to the bottom of the hill and down to Suncold, the wheels will be off. It'll be up on bricks. It'll be dents all in the side of it. Yeah, it's a shame. It was certainly one of the great parts of going to Origin, going down Caxton Street, but...
So they would have thrown like schooner glasses at the bus, wouldn't they?
They threw everything at the bus, and they banged it. Like they stood on the side of it. Like there was no health and safety back then. I mean, it was a different planet, let alone different rugby league. It was a different planet back then, and yeah, they were quite vocal, the Queenslanders. They still are, and that's why this atmosphere for these games is so intense, absolutely so intense. The old Lang Park was far more intimidating than the modern stadium we see there today, which is one of the great football-style, rugby league-style stadiums, rectangular stadiums in the world for our sport. But, the old Lang Park was extremely intimidating. And, Brisbane on Origin night, not just during the day leading up to the game and at the ground during the game, but after the game, win, lose or draw. Brisbane's, she's a tough place to be.
Well, it's a good indication that Maguire's taking the challenge head on, though.
Well, I think he's, there's a saying we have in football, run towards the challenge, run towards your fear, run towards the challenge, run towards the danger. And I think that's what he's wanting to do. And that's very much Michael Maguire. He's a siege mentality. He's a motivator. He's, about steeling yourself for the toughness of the task. And I think that'll be very much in the minds of New South Wales. It certainly was for Game 2. We had him on 100% footy last night, and I asked the question, because I know the mentality of footballers, and I've seen it a lot over the years. And if you can imagine what the dressing room or the week's preparation would have been like leading into Game 2, where you've got Latrell Mitchell coming back after a few years off from Origin, Mitchell Moses, this is probably the watershed game for him in his career coming into halfback. New South Wales have got flogged in the first game. They've been beaten down. We've got this Queensland record in recent times over the last decade or so. They've got to square the series. They're down in Melbourne. It's a neutral ground. Queensland was so dominant in Game 1. So you can imagine what the feeling would have been like around training and leading into the game and in the dressing room before the game and even getting out in the early stages of the game with a small part of them hoping that everything went well, hoping that they put their best foot forward. Until you get out there, you really don't know. But then they go out there and they're so dominant. It came so easy to them, and they just absolutely blasted Queensland off the park and led 34-0 and cruised through the second half. And, it wasn't even a contest. And there were really no excuses for Queensland other than the fact that they'd won Game 1 and they had Game 3 up their sleeve in Brisbane. So, but I said to him, you look at the atmosphere or the feeling in the New South Wales players leading into Game 2, what's the atmosphere around training and the feeling of the players leading into Game 3? There'll be a supreme confidence. There won't be those nerves. They won't be those, worrying about if or should or can I or whatever, all those sort of things. It's kind of like, well, okay, we belted these blokes. We're going to do this again. We'll pick up where we left off. The game will just be the same. And it won't. And if that confidence turns into arrogance or overconfidence or lack of respect for your opposition, I used to talk about this a lot. This game is built on respect. You need to respect your opponent at every minute of every game. If you don't, it will come back to bite you. So if there is any lack of urgency or respect or some sort of. It's not just that they assume things are going to go right. It's kind of like they've still got to go out and make it happen again. This is a new game. It's totally different to what happened in Game 2. It's not going to go out and go like it went in Game 2. It'll be refereed differently. The crowd is different. The atmosphere is more intense. And when you're in your camp down here in New South Wales and you're getting into it and you're trying to steel yourself for this, you're saying, well, I can't feel like that. I need to make sure I'm this. And you're trying to conjure up those feelings of urgency and nerves and the things that you need to help you be at your best. But the atmosphere down here is very relaxed. New South Wales is very confident. No one's really talking about the game. Both sides have gone into, zero communication.
There's just not a word.
Yeah, the promotion's been very quiet leading into this game. I think everyone knows what's at stake, but no one's really talking about it. The media's trying to conjure up stories. Like you can see the media.
Mate, Jerome Luai nearly drowned and getting caught in a wave pool's been the biggest story of the week.
Well, you can see it in the media. The media is actually trying really hard to conjure up stories, and there's nothing coming out of either camp. Either camp is helping them in that regard. Which is why Michael Maguire might say, look, we'll try and get the bus to go down Caxton Street. He knows they're not going down Caxton Street. He knows it's 1,000,000 to 1. The police are just not going to have that happen. But, but when they get to Queensland, when it gets closer to the game and they're on the way to the game and then they get into Suncorp Stadium and they'll go out and walk around the ground early and they will know that they're not in Kansas anymore. They will know that this is going to be different, and right from the opening whistle they'll feel that it's going to be different. So they and hopefully there's enough experience in this New South Wales side, and that they are catching up with history about how good Queensland have been in these games to make sure that they're prepared for everything. The other part I asked Michael Maguire is about what he was expecting from the referee, and history shows us that in these games up there you get absolutely no favours, that Queensland are not held to account as club footballers are, with offside and marker defenders and pressure on kickers and all the different things that happen. So
in 60 games at Suncorp Stadium, the Maroons have won the penalty count 43 times.
Yeah, that's no surprise. But but even the penalties that aren't given in these games, this is the test of Origin. I never complain about it at all. I never did complain about it because I expected it, and I think that's the test of Origin. I think you can't rely on the referee. You can't rely on luck. You can't rely on, the bounce of the ball. You have to win without all these things. And I used to have this saying about you have to win without the ball. It's no good sitting here at the press conference after the game and saying we only had 38% possession, therefore we couldn't win. If you only get 38% possession, you need to win with it. You need to win without the ball. You need to be winning when you haven't got possession of the ball. You need to be winning when you haven't got a chance of scoring points, because you need to prevent them. So this saying, we need to win without the ball, we need to win without the luck, we need to win without the referee, we need to win without the crowd, we need to win without history, we need to win without everything else that you're going to rely on that means absolutely nothing once you take that field. And that's the mindset that New South Wales has got to have. This will be very, very different. They won't get any favours whatsoever, nor should you expect or want them. I don't think you should even be thinking about, I hope we get an even fair share of possession.
Yeah.
I think you need to assume that you won't. I think you need to go into this game, hoping for the best but planning for the worst. Mm-hmm. But you still need to win.
So you've been talking about the dominance of that performance in Melbourne, which undeniably was the case. Last time there was an Origin decider 2 years ago, New South Wales came in with a 32-point win against a 20-point win from Melbourne.
Yeah, we've seen this movie plenty of times. Look at the scores in deciders up there. I mean, there's been a couple of close ones. There was a 21-20 that I remember. There was there's a 14-12 and a 10-8 going back in the 90s, but the rest of them are very dominant Queensland wins. 22-6, 52-6, 34-24, 32-10, 40-14, 27. Oh, that's New South Wales winning. 43-22. So when Queensland get it right on the night, the Suncorp or Lang Park thing overwhelms New South Wales. when they get beaten handsomely. There's been a couple of times where they've nearly pulled it off and a couple of times where they've won. But once Queensland get on top in these encounters, it suffocates you. It suffocates New South Wales sides that don't have that sense of togetherness. Now, I think the Panthers element is really important in this game, and the experience of these players with their grand finals in recent times, and
They won a grand final at Suncorp.
yeah, the leadership in this team. And it's been there the previous years as well. But I think now it's more accustomed. It takes you a few years to sort of learn what it is. I'm just hoping that mentally New South Wales is really prepared for what this challenge is. This is not about beating the Queensland that they played or in game 1 or 2. The Queensland that they played in game 1 and 2 is gone. That Queensland side no longer exists. All right. The mentality of this team. I spoke to Cameron Smith on the weekend prior to the Channel 9 game out there at Brookvale, and he was talking about how disappointed Queensland were in game 2. And I said to him, and he's played more first-class football than any man in history, and he's one of the all-time greats. I said, how is it in this day and age that professional footballers who are full-time, and this is what they do, this is their career and this is their craft, how is it that, an interstate team, a state team made up of the best, how can they turn up and play so poorly in a game like that? How so mentally and physically poorly prepared to play in a game like that and be down 34-0 at half time? How does that happen? I've never known has it ever happened in history that New South Wales has won a half of football by 34 points? I can't ever remember it. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. And I said, how does that happen? Now, obviously it doesn't eat into his psyche. He said, but I think sometimes, when things weren't going well for them early in the game, they get that feeling, well, it doesn't matter. We've got the Brisbane game. We just need to win that one. And I sort of alluded to that leading into the contest, that sometimes Queensland can be soft in game 2 when they've got a 1-0 lead in the series, particularly when they know they've got a decider at Brisbane coming up. It's happened a few times, and it happened on this occasion. But that team is gone. That mentality will be gone. And what he did say was that he'd been around camp this week. He'd gone up to visit Billy and the boys, and he said there was a real steely gaze about them, and that they were going to be totally different. And they will. The other point of that is I don't think that they can suddenly turn into supermen. And I think this is from New South Wales' perspective. The one thing you don't want to do is give Queensland something they haven't got. Don't build them up into something that is insurmountable and that is going to suddenly eat into you when things start to go the well. So if they start to get a few decisions early, or the bounce of the ball goes their way, they have a little bit of luck, or they jump out to an early lead. If all of a sudden you've conjured up them to be bigger than they actually are, that's what builds on top of you. And I think that's beaten a lot of New South Wales sides over the years. So, whilst you've got to have respect for them, you can't build them up into something they're not. Mm-hmm. And the more I look at this Queensland side, that's really important. That's really important that you don't give them something they haven't got, because when I look at the team, I think there are plenty of things they haven't got.
What don't they have?
Well, I just don't think they've got, what previous Queensland teams have had. I think there is enough players in this side. I honestly think New South Wales will win comfortably.
Really?
I do.
Wow.
It's a good Queensland side. It's very typical of what Queensland sides have been in the past. You've got the experience in the key positions of hooker and halfback in Cherry Evans and Ben Hunt. You've got the athletes out wide in Cobbo and Valentine Holmes and Tabuai Fado and these fellas. You've got the unpredictability of Reece Walsh. They have a much better bench this time. There is some impact from the bench with Harry Grant and Kalen Ponga in a skills perspective. Mo Fatawaker and Felice Kafusi are workers. They'll just blend into the game. You won't even know they're out there, or if they're not out there, the Queensland forwards will just work away. There's not a great deal of skill in these Queensland forwards, but they get it from their playmakers, and then they try to ignite these fast people out wide. But there are also some glitches in there. There are also some things that I think New South Wales will be able to play on, and there are some things I don't think Queensland can do in this game, and I think they've got some weaknesses that can be exposed, provided that New South Wales is on its game. I feel far more confident looking at these two sides at the moment that New South Wales has exactly what it takes to win a decider in Queensland against this team, particularly this Queensland team.
Yes. So, Kalyn Ponga's last game was Game 3, 2022. He was player of the match in that decider.
Probably one of the best games I've ever seen him play. I think he came over to the Channel 9 panel after the game, and I said to him, that's the best I've ever seen you play. He really was exceptional that night.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking, well, I suppose everyone's wondering what he's going to do, like how he gets out there. The whole idea of him playing at lock or playing in the middle is clearly he did that on debut. But I think one of the issues that's largely gone undiscussed is 12 months ago we were wondering whether he was going to play again because of concussion. Is he going to go and defend in the middle in an Origin game?
Yeah, well, don't start me on the hysteria over concussion. No, they do recover, but
Of course.
and I think he's living proof of this. Because people were saying how vulnerable he was 12 months ago. Well, now there's no talk of it whatsoever. I think this is a real test for Billy Slater in this game, and I just wonder whether or not people are saying, well, where will Kalyn Ponga come into the contest? Will he come in and play some lock forward? As we're all sort of assuming that's where he's going to get into the game. But if things aren't going well early, if New South Wales is putting a lot of pressure on Reece Walsh early in the contest, if Reece Walsh, with his use and exuberance, is not hitting the mark early in the game, has the coach got the bottle to replace him with Kalyn Ponga? And say, well, this is not working. All right, we're not going to get there with this combination. Maybe I need to put Kalyn at the back.
But you don't anticipate that happening, do you? I mean, Walsh, you're Reece Walsh's number one fan.
Absolutely. And I think Reece Walsh is a superstar. But if New South Wales apply the pressure that I think they're going to do, and if Reece Walsh reacts the way that young players do sometimes and tries to turn every moment into a winner,
he does that a bit.
And it comes unstuck for him, which he's still got errors in his game through his exuberance. He's still got... Now, if Reece Walsh goes out in the first 15 minutes and everything he does hits the mark, New South Wales, can be in trouble. But if New South Wales get their game on, if they get their pressure on, and it's not going well for Reece, and I wonder whether or not Billy, one of the greatest fullbacks of all time, if not the greatest, can say, I need to put Kalyn at fullback. I need to make that change. So, and that's only one thought from me about what could possibly happen. Kalyn Ponga coming on at lock forward or 5'8", to be honest, doesn't really faze me that much. When he first came in and debuted at Origin, it was kind of like, I don't think that was that air of expectation. People didn't expect him to be coming on in that position. He nearly pulled it out late in the game.
He was awesome.
Where he came on the field very fresh and nearly pulled the game out of the fire. But I think New South Wales will be well prepared for him, and certainly when he gets on the field, if he's going to defend in the front line, they're going to target him.
He's only had one game back from injury, by the way.
Yeah, he's had quite a time out this season, from that leg injury. So there's a lot of pressure on Kalyn. And to be brutally honest, if he was going to be on the field, I think he'd feel far more comfortable if he was playing in his traditional role at fullback. It's interesting from Queensland's perspective. I think I've just got this gut feel that New South Wales will win, and by the end of the game, I think the margin will be significant. But I'm just seeing that I can see Queensland falling apart in this one. That's not how the game will start, though. New South Wales are going to have to force that on them. I don't think Queensland will capitulate right from the start, but I think if enough of pressure is applied, if New South Wales can get an even share of the ball, I'm actually quite confident that they'll find the points.
So 9 Blues play their first Origin decider at Suncorp, among them some of that Penrith team that won the grand final and won a string of them. And also within that, players who have experience at a side of their renowned big game players, the Tot Oz, the Crichtons, the Luais, etc. So I think on that basis, the Penrith element of that, they're not going to be overwhelmed by the occasion, are they? Because this is what they've done.
They'll actually welcome it. I think it's just a natural progression in their careers. I think this is, just one of those marks in their career that they're destined for, and they'll tick off as they go through. I keep looking at the New South Wales side, and it's kind of bulletproof from the perspective of I can't see it breaking down emotionally. I can't see it breaking down competitively. I think there will be a genuine connection amongst these players that can get it done. Your likes of Cameron Murray, Angus Crichton and Liam Martin, nothing's going to turn them away or isolate themselves from each other. I think that they're too experienced and they're hard men. I think that in Trebojevic and Payne Haas, they're going to get the game off to a really good start in the middle of the field. Reece Robson is no nonsense. He's not going to overplay his hand. He's not going to suddenly come up with errors and mistakes out of dummy half. I think with Mitchell Moses' kicking game, it's such an asset. And even if they're going to play a pressure, the right foot, left foot combination of Jerome Luai, who's been running the halfback role for Panthers now for a number of weeks, and people have seen what I've been saying for years, that he can marshal a team. He has got a great kicking game and he can handle that as well. So they've got so many options there. The fullback is foolproof. The fullback doesn't play a game like a Reece Walsh. Dylan Edwards is not a speculator.
No.
Dylan Edwards is a real worker, and he just needs to do what he's always done. He doesn't need anything more. He doesn't need to create points. He doesn't need to create opportunities, which is why that pressure will be on Reece Walsh, because he'll feel that's what he has to contribute to the game. He'll feel as though he's got to set up line breaks and tries. Dylan Edwards is not thinking about that at all. He's not thinking about executing, select passing, long passing, short passing, or being creative. He's just thinking about how much work can I put into 80 minutes of football to support my teammates and to get the ball upfield. Brian Todd, it's foolproof, Brian Todd. Zach Lomax, which I've been saying for years, he's an origin-type player. He had that constitution and that physicality. And Crichton, probably the best centre in the game at the moment, and Bradman Best, who excelled in Game 3 last year. And Bradman, too, is foolproof. He's got some defensive glitches at times, just with his technique, but running the ball, he's a beast. He's an absolute beast.
It's almost like for like, him and Mitchell. I know Latrell's got a few tricks, but...
and Latrell got a lot of raps out of Game 2, and obviously so, but he was on the end of a great back line. He was given opportunities. He executed really well. Bradman Best, if he played in Game 2, would have been exactly the same. So I don't think we lose anything there as well. The bench is interesting. Asai Yeo, great leadership, and we know what sort of footballer he is. Mitch Barnett is an interesting selection. I think that the coach obviously likes his competitiveness and his demeanour. And Spencer Leniu, who is still in that bench player mould and gives us great impact. If he comes on at the right time, and New South Wales are in fact on top when he comes on, he can certainly ram it home.
He's been terrific.
Yeah, Connor Watson covers so much, and Connor was terrific in Game 2. I just think that New South Wales looks to me more foolproof, where when I look through the Maroons team, I see a lot of brilliance. I see a lot of, big moments in them, but I also see I can also see some sort of decisiveness if things start to go against them. I just don't think that they'll be connected defensively, which was exposed in Game 2 down in Melbourne. It's hard to fix that in the space of, one game. The defensive deficiencies that they showed, the disconnection that they showed.
And big changes in the back line too. Holmes has been a fixture at centre for the last 3 series. He's moved to the wing. Cobbo in on the wing. He's been playing in the centres for Brisbane, but I'm sure that won't be an issue. And then the return of Gagai, who's played over 20 Origin games. And I have to say, it puts on a Superman cape whenever he wears the Maroons jumper. Do you see those changes as advantageous to trying to fix those defensive issues?
I don't see defensive resolve there at all. I really don't. I think Queensland are going to have to dominate possession and field position. I think that if they're put under pressure for any point in time, I can't see how they contain New South Wales.
I haven't heard you be this confident ever.
Yeah, well, I just can't see them. If New South Wales, and it all relies on possession, and, I can't see Queensland holding New South Wales if New South Wales get possession at their end of the field. Consistent possession. You might hold them out once or twice. I just don't see it. I just don't see Queensland holding them. I just don't. Dane Gagai has always been a stellar performer at this level, mainly as a winger, not so much as a centre. And defensively in the centres, at this stage of his career, he's been found out at club level a number of times. You don't suddenly turn that on just because you're playing Origin. Tabuai Fido, plays fullback for his club and centre in Origin, and
he's a superstar.
Selwyn Cobbo missed game 2. We don't really know what happened there, and there's sort of
what's all that about? The scuttlebutt.
I don't know. Selwyn Cobbo's very young, mate. He's very young, and he's certainly one they can put a lot of pressure on. Daly Cherry Evans, I mean, he's been a stellar performer, but he's certainly at the back end of his career. And then forwards wise, I'm astonished that Jaden Sewer's not there. And if they're going to replace Jaden Sewer, why probably Fafita didn't get the nod, in this game, I just don't know. I don't understand the Kurt Capewell selection. Now, Kurt's a great campaigner and he's been experienced and he's been around a long time and he's played in winning sides, but I haven't seen Origin starting in him now for a couple of seasons. And
maybe Kafusi will start.
Well, maybe, but even, he's been moved into the front row with his team up there into the middle. I think Queensland would have to dominate possession significantly to win this game. I don't think defensively they can hold up. I really don't. I just don't think they can. In fact, the more I look at it, the more I look at the two teams, I can't see it. I can see a scenario where Queensland get a lot of ball and Reece Walsh is on fire and Cherry Evans is kicking and controlling the game and they've got great athletes and they can score from their own end of the field. I can see moments of the game where that happens. I can see where that can be a danger. I just don't see Queensland defensively for 80 minutes. If New South Wales get an even share of possession and handle their possession well, I can't see them stopping New South Wales from scoring tries. And you look at game 2 there in Melbourne. Had halftime not come, that wasn't going to stop.
No.
That 34 was going to be 84. It wasn't going to stop. The only thing that stopped that was halftime. That's what stopped it.
I haven't heard you bullish like this before.
Well, and as I say, I've got a great respect for history and what Queensland's done in the past. But you know what? That means nothing when they take the field here this week. They've got to do it for themselves. The ghosts of the past and the legends of the past aren't going to do it for them here. And New South Wales needs to get that through their head. They need to have respect for their opposition and they need to know that the game's not going to be like it was in game 2, certainly for a good portion of it. But don't give Queensland something they haven't got.
Do you think they'll move the ball like they did early in the game?
New South Wales? I think that's their natural instinct. I've always believed for New South Wales you can't get bogged down too much in Origin. My philosophy was always run them around, turn them around, run them around, turn them around. Be prepared to pass the ball and run them around. Play to the outside in your own half, play to the inside in their half.
Yeah, right.
Move the ball around in your own half of the field. Make them chase you. Don't let them dominate you. Because when you get up there in deciders, their markers they will jump early from marker. They will jump early on the 10 metres. They'll virtually threaten the referee to penalise them, which, it just won't happen. The referee will put his whistle in the pocket.
Why does that happen?
Because I think that's the test of Origin. I don't.
But why is the referee? Why is there more leeway?
I don't complain about that.
I know you don't, but why is there more leeway?
Every game should be like that. Every game should be like that. I think our game is totally over-refereed and totally over-officiated a lot of the time. That the games would be a hell of a lot better if referees just kept out of it for a lot longer.
I don't disagree with that.
So that's always been my belief.
All right, before I get your bold prediction that we'll have in perpetuity, I've just made up a trivia question for you. So Mitch Barnett's the second Warrior to play Origin for New South Wales.
Yeah.
Who's the other? A little bit of music while Gus ponders that. Then we'll get his thoughts, lock him in for Game 3. State of Origin 3, exclusively live and free on 9, 7 o'clock. We'll have all the build-up, and look, there will be great tension. And I think, as we've already elaborated on, it's been dead quiet. Dead quiet. It's like the storm clouds are just rolling in.
I'm just constant. I'm confident that neither camp wants to say or do anything to ignite the opposition that could possibly get into the media as either arrogance or confidence or overconfidence or critical. I think they've taken the respect for each other to a whole new level in the lead up to this.
It's almost like a media gag.
And I think that's because Game 2 absolutely scared the hell out of Queensland. Honestly, I think it did. I think Game 2, I think that first half, I think you could see it on the coach's face. I think you could see it on the Queenslanders. I think that scared the hell out of them. And I'm not sure that they honestly believe they can turn it around. they'll, all the old legends and all the old Queensland history will try to convince them that it's going to be different. And, like I say, I've got great respect for it. I just don't know that they'll believe it in their hearts. Unless something really good happens for them early.
I can see these quotes all over the Queensland change room walls tomorrow night.
Yeah, good. Put it in their face. Because I think this is one of those times where New South Wales really has to take it to them and not, when you've got your knee on someone's throat in the gutter, you don't let them up. It's as simple as that. And I think New South Wales have got their knee on their throat. I think they've got them down, and you can't build them up into something they're not. You can't give them something they haven't got. And I see a lot that Queensland don't have in this side at the moment.
Righto. Who's the other Warrior to play for New South Wales?
It's an interesting question because there have been a number of Warriors that played for Queensland over the years. I'm trying to think of someone who played for New South Wales.
He finished his career. He started and played a lot of games with enormous success at another club, and then went to the Warriors, and was also played with distinction. Back rower.
Yeah.
I think he's played. I don't know if he's played 300 games.
Wow, well, then I should
Maybe
know
not.
that. I should know that. I keep thinking of all the Queenslanders that played for the Warriors.
Played for Melbourne as well.
Played for Melbourne.
Melbourne Warriors.
Oh, yeah, Ryan Hoffman.
Ryan Hoffman. Correct. And Kurt Capel became the first Warrior to play for Queensland since Jacob Lillyman in Game 2. So there you are.
Steve Price did.
Steve Price.
I think the old...
PJ Marsh.
PJ
Kevin
Marsh,
Campion.
Kevin Campion, the lock forward. Yeah,
Yep.
there were a few of those over the years.
Righto. Score. And for anyone out there who likes to have a little investment, why don't you give him a first try scorer as well?
Yeah, look, I don't know, and I don't, I can see it being quite dominant. I think I can see five or six tries to 2
Okay.
New South Wales. I can't see more than a couple of tries for Queensland, and I can see any number of opportunities for New South Wales. I think it'll be quite dominant, which is a big turnaround for how I felt leading into Game 1. Game 1, we just had the wrong side, and it went pear-shaped because we lost a player early in the game. And looking at that game, had we not lost that player, that would have been a lot closer. I think New South Wales gave themselves a lot of confidence for what they actually did with 12 men for the next hour or so of that contest. It blew out late, but they kept themselves in the contest. And then I can't get my head around that first half in Melbourne. There was things in that first half that you just can't put a Band-Aid over. You just can't repair in the space of one game. I just don't... I don't think Queensland are going to be able to do it.
Okay. And first try scorer?
For New South Wales?
Or anyone. What about someone to score a try?
Someone to score a try?
Yeah.
I think Bradman Best will score a
Bradman
try.
Best. Well, he scored 2 on debut.
Yeah, I think he'll score a try.
Okay. Well, I'll see you up in Brisbane. I defy you to wear... I love it. Your favourite last word was when you went over to the Brisbane the Suncorp fans and waved the jumper around. So can you do something like that again? At least get a scarf. Give her the Kevin Sheedy in front of the punters.
No. If someone jumped the fence, I wouldn't be able to defend myself.
Oh, you'd be right. All right. Thanks for that, Gus. I'll
Pleasure.
see you tomorrow at Suncorp Stadium for the Origin Decider of 2024, exclusively live and free on 9 and 9 now from 7 o'clock. Don't miss it.
This year, NRL on 9 is your one-stop shop for all footy.
That's right, Freddie. Not about the highlights. Action. 7 days a week.
Billy and Gus podcast, get that on your drive on the way home. Immortal Behaviour. Grab a seat on the couch for that. And, of course, my favourite, Freddie and the Owner.
The best footy brains, the biggest games.
Don't trust the algorithm. Subscribe to NRL on 9 and get all your entertainment there.